Welcome to the NetzpolitikTV podcast. My name is Markus Beckedahl and my guest today is Mike Linksvayer from Creative Commons. You are Chief Technology Officer of Creative Commons, is that right?
I was Chief Technology Officer until March or April. I'm now Vice President, but
it's better.
Yeah, right. Not a huge change. I'm basically just managing more people. We have a CTO now named Nathan Yergler, who was our senior software engineer and has taken over most of the technology management and development. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Can you give us a small introduction into Creative Commons, what it is about?
Well, hopefully your viewers are familiar, but Creative Commons offers copyright licenses and tools related to them that allow creators to offer the public some rights so that people can do interesting things with works, or not interesting things, without asking for permission. So there are several different ways you can think about it. One way would be like open source or free software for content or for media, although Creative Commons does offer a broader range of licenses, some more restrictive licenses than you'll find in the open source world. And my excuse or explanation for that is just that media and content is at least 10 years behind software, both culturally in terms of really getting openness and things like that. And also it's just different. The kind of media world is much bigger than the software world and has different needs. You can also think about it strictly in terms of kind of law and economics, that the costs of collaboration have gone way down with the internet and digital media, but then the legal reaction against that has made costs go up. So the kind of legal annoyance and threat has gone way up. So obviously there needs to be a solution, and it's very expensive to lobby for legal change and such. So, and there's already the success of free software to copy. So let's try to apply kind of the same ideas of enabling people to work together voluntarily in the media space. So you can also think about it in other ways, like what's the desire for participatory culture, for ensuring that speech stays free, for a vibrant democracy, cultural environmentalism, making sure culture doesn't get locked up. There are a whole bunch of different ways to think about it, but fundamentally people apply Creative Commons licenses to their works. They choose, for example, you can do anything with my work if you give me credit, so they choose a Creative Commons attribution license, and let's just say they're a video blogger, then they put the license notice on their video blog, and people see and say, oh, I can remix this video if you give credits. And then we have a technical component such that Google and Yahoo, when they index that page, says, oh, this page is under the Creative Commons attribution license. So if somebody wants to restrict their search to things that only they can actually use, not just look at, then you can do that because of the technical component of the Creative Commons tool set.
And let's come to the technological component. Mm-hmm. What is about the metadata of Creative Commons?
Right, so the metadata really enables the last thing that I was talking about, that when somebody applies a license to a work, there needs to be a part of that notice that a computer can read. Otherwise, without artificial intelligence, there'd be no way to actually index it and leverage everything you expect on the web, so that Google and Yahoo can find things that are licensed for you, so that licenses can be part of website or web platform APIs like Flickr, for example. Basically, so you can have computers help you work collaboratively in a legal fashion. Without that layer, that wouldn't be possible. It would just be, oh, I see this notice on the website. I can tell my friend about it, but that would be the kind of person-to-person non-computer mediated way of discovering things would be the only way of discovering things, and there's no point in that. I mean, we're trying to enable collaboration, that's helped by the web, so it doesn't make any sense not to have a component to, a built-in part of the license that really enables that.
How do I get metadata into content of my own?
Right. So the normal case is if you have your own website or are working on a site that doesn't directly support Creative Commons licenses, you can go to the creativecommons.org site and click license, and you will get a form that lets you choose a license, so you can specify what terms you want. Like, do you want to allow commercial use? Do you want to allow people to remix your work? And if you want to allow people to remix your work, do you want to make them share alike? So that's like our version of copyleft. Then you get a license that includes a license button. It also includes some metadata, so that you can copy and paste it and put it in your website template or in your blog post if you're only licensing one thing. And you don't even really have to know about the metadata. That's the nice thing about it. It just is included in the HTML that we give you. But the other common case is that you're publishing through a site that supports Creative Commons. So Flickr is a good example of this. You can choose to have anything you upload be under Creative Commons license, or you can go and say, I want this picture to be under Creative Commons license, this picture not to be. In that case, then that's in the Flickr database, and when Flickr publishes a web page, it will include some machine-readable annotation in that, so that again, you don't need to know about the metadata at all. It just kind of happens transparently in the publishing process, and that's ideal because obviously metadata is not an exciting topic for most people. It's kind of abstract, and if we force people to learn about metadata before they could get a CC license, then nobody would do so. I mean, except maybe the people watching your show would. But.
Yeah, but that are only two examples. So what is about documents, like Open Office document? What is about MP3s?
Right. Well, that is a good point. But the most, even for documents that are not kind of natively part of a web page, publishing notice on the web is still the most important part, because that's kind of the way people navigate information now, and it's certainly the way Google and Yahoo and other search engines index information, and things like, other infrastructure also is very web-centric, like feeds, for example. So even if you are publishing an MP3 and you embed the license, it's still highly recommended that you have a corresponding notice on kind of the web page that is the home for that MP3. That said, embedding metadata in media files, in documents, is a hard problem because there's so many different formats. Many of them are proprietary. Many of the popular ones are proprietary, and often embedding metadata is kind of an afterthought, not very well supported. There might be no UI for it. For example, you can put a license in MP3, but it will never be displayed in any media player. That said, so we do have a standard for embedding licenses in an ID3 tag in MP3, and some software will recommend it, will recognize it, and we have some tools for doing that automatically. And some Creative Commons enabled music hosts will do that embedding for you after you've uploaded the file. So again, in the ideal case, you don't have to know about it. For OpenOffice, we have, actually that was a Google Summer of Code project this summer, so we have an OpenOffice extension that will let you choose a CC license from within the program, and then both creates auto text so that you could have on every page or in your in your title page or wherever, the back page, wherever is appropriate, it would automatically expand out the license you've chosen, kind of just like page number or date or other auto text, things like that. And it will also embed metadata in the document that you can't see. You can see in the file properties or something like that. there's actually, I mean, this is getting kind of detailed, but actually OpenOffice is going through kind of a change in terms of how they handle metadata in the document. And I think they're moving towards using RDF, or a constrained version of RDF, which is kind of the underpinnings of the semantic web, which is good for Creative Commons because we've kind of been using semantic web technology in a non-complicated way because we think eventually that will have a big payoff. And then for things other than so it'll take, but I mean, since OpenOffice is so important, I want to be clear that the extension is not ready for prime time. It needs some UI work, but we're hoping to get that done soon. And then, so it works, but then the kind of improved metadata will probably come along in OpenOffice 3.0 or whatever the next version of it is. So, but authors will be able to use it and CC license their stuff. I mean, you can use it, even do it manually now by adding the appropriate notice. And then for other document types, we're encouraging people to use a metadata embedding format called XMP, which is another kind of constrained RDF encoding developed by Adobe, and is now in all Adobe products, and has been widely adopted by high-end media management software, typically called digital asset management programs, which I'd characterize as enterprise software for management shops. That technology is kind of filtering down to the desktop because now, I mean, just out of necessity, everybody, has to manage a huge amount of media, even single person or a tiny shop that can't afford expensive software. So the nice thing about XMP, besides that it's RDF and developed by Adobe, so that comes with some built-in support, is that Adobe's recently open sourced some of its libraries for dealing with XMP. Microsoft supports XMP to some extent in its Vista photo software, and there's some open source projects that are now using XMP for various types of embedding, and we have our own open source libraries, including one called liblicense, which is kind of a general licensing library in C that software can include support licensing. One of those aspects is embedding and reading embedded metadata in files, and XMP is the primary way we're supporting that. I think there's a free software library called XMP, I think, by a guy in France named Hubert. I'm forgetting his last name now, but anyway, if you search for that or look on the CC wiki at the page on XMP, all the details will be there. So.
Yeah, there are some free software projects around Creative Commons. Can you explain them?
Yeah, well, liblicense that I just mentioned is probably the most vibrant one at the time. Right now, it started off, the concept has existed for a while, but we really got the ball rolling this summer. One of our technical interns, with a lot of assistance from other technical staff, finally got it to a usable state, and we're talking to people from KDE and GNOME and also OLPC about getting it built into, or creating a UI on top of the library for each of those, and we're pretty far along. So that the compelling idea, I think, there is that a free software desktop really ought to be able to recognize free content. I mean, ignore the debate about whether some of the CC licenses are free, but content that you can use. And if somebody wants to do a patch that only recognizes the ones that somebody considers free, they can do that. So that's probably the most active project right now. We expect it to really pay off big time over the next year. Then we also have CCHost, which is kind of a remix-oriented content management system. You can think of it that way. It makes kind of a music in media host website, but CC licensing is built in, and tracking the genealogy of remixing is built in, or derivative works more generally. Remix is kind of one genre of that. And the reason we build it is that one of the ability to make derivative works is one of maybe the most important freedom that you get from using a CC license, or at least not the most restrictive one. It doesn't allow that. And it was so obvious to us, but there weren't, even though music communities were supporting CC and you could, take the appropriate licensed music and remix it, it's kind of hard to discover that process is actually happening. So socially, you can't see it, so there's no knowledge being built up, and there's obviously no machine-readable component of it, so there's no way to actually track that. So we built the software and built a pretty successful site called CCMixter on top of it. The software is under the GPL, and there's been a lot of cool success stories on CCMixter, including some major label artists kind of dipping their toes to not only allowing their fans to remix their music, but allowing the fans to remix music and have some rights, as opposed to just all of the rights being owned by the record company or whatever. And some other sites that are taking that software to build other kinds of kind of open content media hosting sites around that. I guess one big one is the Open Clip Art Library. There's some kind of language-specific music remix and video remix sites that are using the software as well. And one kind of cheesy thing, but nice, is that it won an award at last year's Linux World San Francisco Best. I think it was the best collaboration software or something like that, which is kind of cool. And then we have a couple other big projects which haven't seen a lot of development recently because of changes in the landscape. One is called CC Publisher, which is basically a desktop application, works on all three major platforms that let you drag and drop a file, choose a license, and have it uploaded to the Internet Archive or through plugins, other sites. The problem is that when CC started, you could create a really big video file, but web upload, it would not handle more than 10 megabytes. So you needed a desktop application to hide the complexity of FTPing and working with Internet Archive's weird naming conventions and things like that. But more recently, web upload has gotten a lot better, and I think the Internet Archive recommends using their new web upload mechanism for files up to 100 megabytes. So there's a smaller niche now, and the program is kind of done. Of course, there's always bugs to fix, but and then another one called MoCC is an extension for Firefox that recognizes metadata as you're browsing. So if you're browsing page that has content that's under CC license, it will show you the right icons in your status bar, so that you don't have to squint and look for the license button and is it in that big row of buttons or whatever. And the reason we haven't done work on that recently is because we're kind of waiting to see what happens with Firefox 3, and there's this other more general metadata extension called Operator that might get built in and supports the formats of metadata that we're using. So it might be that we just end up having a script for Operator, which adds the kind of Creative Commons specific UI parts, and we don't have to maintain the whole parsing and UI infrastructure, but it's just a little hook. Actually, I just saw another project that we didn't continue working on longer ago was we built a search engine prototype when Creative Commons first launched, because obviously we're just launching, weren't big enough to get interest in Google and Yahoo. So we first built a really slow prototype. The crawler was in Python. Crawler and front end were in Python. We used Postgres and the tsearch2 full text extension. It was quite slow. Overall, the whole system was quite slow, although we didn't try to optimize it. But it was a good prototype because it showed the power that you've indexed some stuff and you can actually search for show me pictures of roses that I can use commercially, and it actually even though we only indexed 100,000 documents, it actually worked and was pretty powerful. So then we built another thing that was more than a prototype, I think, really, on Nutch, which is an open source search stack built on top of the Lucene open source full text indexer. And that was really quite fast. We didn't index a lot more pages. And that actually got us built into Firefox now in that search dropdown that a lot of people just see as the Google search. But you can actually click on it and see other, choose to search Yahoo and Wikipedia and probably dictionary.com and Creative Commons, which is pretty cool. But we've kind of dropped that development for now because Google and Yahoo saw how cool that was, I guess. And they've actually built in kind of Creative Commons filtered search into their advanced search pages. So, yeah, there are actually a bunch of other projects too, tools we have for making it easy to embed CC license choosing in your website, and so.
There are lots of free software developers outside who maybe wants to join your mission helping Creative Commons. How can a developer help you in the future?
Right. Well, there's really any number of ways. If you go to wiki.creativecommons.org, we have kind of a developer page that includes a long list of, I think, what we call developer challenges, but you can just think of a wish list of projects we would like people to take on. There's anything from improving the software that we've kind of developed in-house. There's any content creation or particularly free software content creation or viewing software really ought to be able to let creators choose a CC license and include it in their media, or let people who are, listening to tunes in Rhythmbox or Banshee be able to see that, hey, this tune is CC licensed, and that way I can use it in my commercial podcast or whatever. So that I think is really useful. A lot of that work can be done by extensions because most Banshee and Rhythmbox, for example, have plugin architectures. And then there's the web is really a whole nother developer audience, I guess. And there's so many platforms for collaboration on the web that also ought to be CC enabled. Some of them have plugins, but it's nice to have the plugins improved, or if you happen to be a core developer on one of these projects, it'd be great to have it shipped by default. I mean, for example, a good example of this is actually MediaWiki. When you do a new MediaWiki installation, I think I can't remember if it's a 1 or 2 page install now, or web page install, but on first or second page, one of the choices is, choose a license. You can choose the FDL or one of the CC licenses, and then once you've made that choice, it's stored in the database someplace, and the license goes on all the web pages, and it's pretty much done. And then there are more kind of infrastructural things that can help that maybe are not even directly related to enabling CC licensing in a particular program, but there are a bunch of metadata projects that basically will help with this kind of machine-mediated collaboration, like getting XMP built into programs, improving the free software XMP implementation. There's other RDF-oriented tools as well that could use love and care, or even if somebody wants to take the Creative Commons Nutch extension and do other cool things with it that Google and Yahoo don't yet do, like when you get search results, if it discovers that there are remixes of a particular search results, then show those in line in the search results. So that's just a sampling, but
that's some ways to help you.
Right.
Is there anything we forgot about the technology issues of Creative Commons?
Well, I would highlight two other things. Both of which are kind of abstract. One is all of these tools are and methods for embedding metadata, et cetera, have a problem with granularity to some extent. So, I mean, media can be very amorphous in general, so it's hard to say precisely what is licensed, and somebody could just license a part of a text or just an image in text. So we're developing standards to improve that, but we could get more eyes on that, and also people actually implementing support for that when they're building this software. And I think the main thing to look at there is called RDFA, which stands for RDF in attributes, basically. So it's a way of annotating HTML or other XML files kind of in line without having the metadata be kind of alongside or external to whatever document you're dealing with, to reduce problems with metadata only being used for spam or just not being maintained, basically so it stays in sync with stuff intended for humans. The other big issue that's a little bit more abstract is discovery, I think. There's a huge amount of content out there that is free or otherwise Creative Commons licensed, and I think really in a lot of content types, especially music, it's really just as good as the stuff that's being put out by major media. But it doesn't have the marketing. It doesn't either have nostalgia behind it because people have been listening to it for 30 years, or kind of instant nostalgia that can be created by $1 million marketing campaign. So any tool for discovery, that lets discovery be done in a decentralized way, I think really helps the kind of open content universe. So that can involve both building and using these discovery tools. I mean, it doesn't even have to be technical. It can just be a podcaster, blogging about or not even a podcaster, just a blogger, just blogging about, hey, I've discovered this free media that you can actually do stuff with. Tell people about it. That's the way discovery happens socially, but then there's also building into the software layer, and we really want kind of sites that are used for discovery like Last.fm to have CC built in. So
yeah. Then I wish you good luck for the future.
Great.
And thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much.